Imagine a fear so profound, so deeply ingrained, that it targets the one thing you need most to survive, the very act meant to restore you. It's not a fear of monsters under the bed or the dark unknown. It's the terror of sleep itself. In a world where mental health awareness is skyrocketing, why does somniphobia remain a silent, isolating terror, rarely spoken about, almost deliberately hidden in the shadows? What untold horrors lurk behind the closed eyes of those who dread the night? Somniphobia is more than just a reluctance to go to bed. It's a crippling, irrational dread that actively resists the biological imperative to rest. This isn't your average insomniac, tossing and turning with racing thoughts about tomorrow's report. This is someone whose primal instinct screams against the very concept of unconsciousness. For them, the approaching night isn't a promise of reprieve, but an inexorable march towards an abyss they desperately try to avoid. Think about that for a moment. The body's natural cycle, designed for healing and rejuvenation, becomes a source of unimaginable terror. The paradox is as cruel as it is captivating. How can something so essential become something so feared? The implications are immediate and devastating. Quality of life deteriorates, relationships fray, and the very fabric of reality can begin to unravel under the relentless assault of sleep deprivation. Yet, unlike other phobias that are openly discussed, somniphobia persists in a quiet, disturbing corner of the human psyche, cloaked in shame and misunderstanding. What is it about this particular fear that silences its sufferers? And why does society collectively avert its gaze from such an agonizing affliction? To understand this profound terror, we must delve into its murky origins. Somniphobia doesn't typically appear out of nowhere. It's often an insidious seed planted by earlier traumatic experiences. Sometimes it stems from repeated nightmares so vivid, so visceral, that the sufferer begins to associate sleep with inescapable torment. Imagine experiencing the same horrifying scenario night after night, the terror feeling as real as waking life, leaving a profound residual anxiety that seeps into your waking hours. Then there's the equally unsettling phenomenon of sleep paralysis, being fully conscious but utterly unable to move, trapped within your own body, often accompanied by terrifying hallucinations of shadowy figures or oppressive presences. For some, a single, particularly harrowing episode is enough to shatter their trust in sleep, transforming their bed into a hostile battleground. But the roots can be even deeper, more existential. For many, the fear of sleep is a fear of losing control, of surrendering consciousness, of relinquishing autonomy over one's own mind and body. It's the stark realization that for several hours each day they are utterly vulnerable, at the mercy of their subconscious. This can manifest as an overwhelming anxiety about death, sleep feeling like a mini-death, a dress rehearsal for the final cessation of consciousness. Others fear what might happen while they're asleep, a fear of not waking up, or of waking up to a radically altered world, or even the chilling thought of being vulnerable to external threats. Consider the case of Alex, a fictional composite demonstrating a common progression. Alex began experiencing unusually intense night terrors in his late teens. Not just bad dreams, but fully fledged screaming episodes where he would thrash and genuinely believe he was being pursued, even attacked. These episodes left him physically drained and emotionally shattered. As he grew older, the night terrors subsided, but a new, more insidious fear took root. He started associating sleep itself with the loss of control, the gateway to those terrifying, uncontrollable experiences. Getting into bed became a ritual of dread. He'd delay, distract himself, anything to push back the inevitable. Gradually, his waking hours became blurred, his concentration fractured. The fear wasn't about the content of dreams anymore. It was about the state of dreaming, the very act of surrendering his consciousness. The exhaustion itself became a torment, a vicious cycle where the overwhelming need for sleep clashed violently with the terror of succumbing to it. He started seeing things in his peripheral vision, hearing faint whispers when no one was around. His anxiety ratcheted up with every passing hour of wakefulness. Alex wasn't just tired, he was unraveling, piece by agonizing piece, his life shrinking to the desperate, solitary struggle against the approaching night. As days bled into weeks, Alex's somniphobia reached its terrifying climax. He was existing on barely an hour or two of fractured sleep every 2 or 3 days, his mind a kaleidoscopic mess of paranoia and distortion. His apartment, once a sanctuary, had become a prison. He taped over his windows, convinced that the streetlight outside held a malevolent gaze. Every shadow seemed to coalesce into something menacing, every creak of the floorboards a confirmation of an encroaching evil. He'd tried everything, herbal remedies, prescription sleep aids, all of which either failed to work against his sheer terror or left him feeling even more disconnected and disoriented. One particularly agonizing evening, after what felt like 72 hours of continuous wakefulness, Alex barricaded himself in his living room, a cheap laptop his only companion. He was streaming a low-budget horror movie, the irony entirely lost on him, just to keep his mind occupied. His eyes burned, feeling like sandpaper. His head throbbed with a dull, incessant drumbeat. He pinched himself, bit his tongue, anything to stave off the encroaching void. The lines between what was real and what was born of exhaustion began to blur. He saw a fleeting distortion on the screen, a face within the static grimacing at him. He blinked hard, and it was gone. But the fear remained, a cold knot in his stomach. He felt a crawling sensation on his arm and slapped at it, only to find nothing there. Then a voice, faint but clear, whispered his name from across the empty room. Alex. His heart hammered against his ribs. He spun around, clutching a heavy book, his breath ragged. Nothing. Just the oppressive silence of the apartment, broken only by the distant hum of the movie. But the voice came again, closer this time, right beside his ear. You're tired, Alex. Don't you want to rest? It was his own voice, distorted, mocking. He scrambled away, pressing himself against the far wall, his eyes darting frantically. He was hallucinating, he knew that much, but knowing didn't lessen the terror. He felt a profound, overwhelming sensation of being watched, judged. Shadows in the corners of the room seemed to deepen, to take on new, unsettling forms. He could almost feel an unseen presence breathing down his neck. The exhaustion was a suffocating blanket, pulling him down, but the fear was an electrified fence, shocking him back to a horrifying wakefulness. He started to laugh, a desperate, broken sound. He had reached the precipice. He could feel his body, his mind giving up. The horror wasn't just the external hallucinations, it was the internal collapse, the sense of his own sanity slipping through his fingers. He stumbled over to his couch, falling onto it, panting. He looked at the ceiling, his vision swimming, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, he didn't fight it. He couldn't. His fear of sleep was still there, a monstrous thing in his peripheral mind, but it was being eclipsed by something even more terrifying, the fear of what would become of him if he didn't surrender. As his eyes finally, impossibly closed, he felt a jolt, not of terror, but of profound, unsettling surrender. What horrors awaited him in the darkness he now knowingly entered? To this day, somniphobia remains a hushed affliction, an insidious beast that thrives in the isolation of its sufferers. We talk about depression, anxiety, PTSD, and even other specific phobias with increasing openness. But the terror of sleep? It often stays hidden, shrouded in personal shame, and a society that struggles to comprehend a fear of something so fundamental, so universal. Perhaps it's because the outward manifestations are often mistaken for mere insomnia or stress. Perhaps it's because discussing a fear of unconsciousness touches upon deeper, more primal anxieties we'd rather not confront. Whatever the reason, untold numbers of individuals are silently battling this profound phobia, living in perpetual exhaustion, their lives slowly eroding under the constant strain. They exist in a twilight state, perpetually weary, yet forever vigilant against the coming night. Their stories, like Alex's, often remain untold, their suffering invisible. So the next time you drift off easily to sleep, consider the silent battles being waged in the dark. Consider those for whom rest is not a gift, but a sentence. The true monsters, it seems, aren't always under the bed. Sometimes they're lurking in the very act of closing your eyes, and until we collectively acknowledge these hidden fears, many will continue to suffer in the isolating darkness, forever dreading the approach of night.